This looks like trouble. I think I got off lightly with the bulkhead, but not as light as I thought. It is not all clean sailing, so we've got a few things we can have a look at right now. Down here on the passenger side door pillar, what started off as a little pinprick turned into this big gaping wound right here, and you can have a look around the back and you can see it's all eaten out. The inside, however, a little bit rusty, but probably lasts another 20 years. We can see some mischief working its way into the end down here, and as far as the footwell goes, we can see this panel is looking a little cancerous. We might have to investigate that, and then we'll go over to the driver's side. We have a little bit of corrosion getting into this groove where a seal runs, but it doesn't look too bad. I think we could patch that, but in between this door pillar and the other panel, we're seeing some nasty rot eating away in there. I've taken some liberty of cutting out a square hole where there was rust forming in the footwell, and we can see the second skin behind that's also been eaten out. And I think in cases like that, I'll be looking at just cutting and patching rather than trying to cut out an entire footwell. I don't think that's necessary. The bottom of the door pillar on this side is rusting, but it's not as bad as the other, which is a surprise. On what I suppose you could call the front of it, you can see I've scraped away already some of the metal that I thought was going to be pretty grim, but it's come up fairly well. So I think there's going to be a few repairs done. I do plan to scratch back all the paint, and I think it's going to need some rust protection and then a new paint job. And as far as the door pillars go, I have two brand new ones that I plan to replace the originals with. This bit here should be interesting. We'll probably just see rust and bits of metal explode everywhere when I put the grinder on it. It's a bit buggered in there. I might even change this over to the blade and cut a square bit out just to see how bad it is. Well, I don't know if you'd call it a benefit of stripping back the paint. However, in doing so, it's revealed a lot more trouble spots than what we initially thought we had. There's that nasty big gouge there, over in that far corner, and this whole top panel that holds the vents is looking pretty rough. But another big bonus is, stripping back the paint, we can see on these door pillar posts what look like the plug welds that hold them on. And so being able to know where they are is going to go a long way in helping us get this thing off. Well, trying to get this paint off with the grinder has been quite hard work, but I was come up with the idea maybe with some leftover brake fluid to painted that on, and yeah, you can see it's bubbled up nicely and it comes off a hell of a lot easier. Well, here we have our basic frame, and I think we're ready to tack it together. I would like to have had a slightly flatter floor to work with, but I'm actually grateful to have a floor. My Australian workshop was pretty much under whichever tree was shadiest and had a viable workspace beneath. 3 at 110 volts. On my calculations, we're using 16 gauge box steel. Well, you may have noticed in previous episodes that I wear my coveralls wide open like this. And that's not just because I have a chest that would elicit strong feelings in a female pigeon, but more importantly, the zipper's stuffed. Went for a cheeky wee around the back of the workshop and that was it, never come back up again. Buggered. So I'm using my good ones to mitigate the issue of flash burn on the chest. And these are the ones that I wear when me and Wilms go out to dinner. Oh, for fuck's sake. That's the basis for our frame completed. Not too bad. Well, look at these welds right here, eh? Anyone not familiar with the channel would be looking at those and saying they're a load of rubbish, but folk familiar with the channel would be noticing a marked improvement. I mean, it's even close to being in the right spot. Well, you're going to be looking at this thinking, ugh, those drill bits are cooked. Well, you're right. We have our frame attached to the 4 points, which is all well and good, but we're going to start ripping this thing apart. So we really do need the frame anchored to something that's not going to shift and keep those 4 attachment points exactly where they should be. The way we're going to accomplish this is to use our 2 tabs that we cut and lock them onto the footwells with a couple of nuts and bolts. Trying to reach these buggers is not an easy task. So at that point we have our strut and we're going to put that right there and manoeuvre this into a position we like. There we go. Hey, look at this, standing up all on its own. So on the front side that you're looking at, it looks like we have rivets that are holding the 2 pieces together. And then on the other side we have spot welds, and I think the scariest bit is over here on the driver's side. So we might pull that post off first and just see what happens. Centre punch hit with the hammer. Didn't need the drill on that one. Well, that went easier than I thought. I expected these rivets to be a little difficult, but they just popped out. suspicions things are pretty rotten in there. Well, I suppose about now we could release it from its bindings and see at what stage we are at. Now we got our pillar post removed, we can catch a glimpse at some of the mischief that's gone on behind the scenes. And we can also see that this entire bulkhead is a jigsaw of bent and folded sheet metal all stitched together with spot welds. And whenever there's an overlap, you can pretty much be assured our friend the rust is in there wrecking havoc. Now that brings us to the crux of this discussion. What's the best way of tackling the job? When rust is involved, you need to cut them out. That would involve removing all these panels and either fabricating them or replacing them. And at the time of filming, I've tried to contact Radford Bulkheads, but they're not talking to me, so I don't know how much new panels are going to cost or even if I can get them. The other alternative would be to buy a new bulkhead, the cost of which would greatly narrow that walkway between making a living and living under a bridge. So I'm going to stick to my original plan of cut and patch out the worst bits, put it all back together, give it a paint job, throw it back on the truck. So as far as cutting goes, we want to go steady, but I want to start with this panel right here, and that'll also give us access to that very rusted out footwell that you can see. You may have heard of a saying, measure twice, cut once. Well, I'm that guy. I can measure 20 times and come up with a different figure every time, so I'm not leaving anything to chance. While you ain't been looking, I've been busy making templates. I think my cut was a bit crap. I don't think we need to have a close look at it. No, I said we don't need to have a close look at it. Well, I've been doing an online course for welding, aka YouTube, where all reliable and trustworthy informants can be found devoid of any credentials, me included. From research and experience, my extensive experience, I've been finding this thin sheet metal difficult to weld and not blow holes in it. So to avoid too much heat buildup, I'm going to stitch it together in short runs, and pressed up against the back is the old aluminium housing from out of the disco that I'm hoping to use as a heat sink. All right, there we go. The big test will be is if we see any pinholes. Get the torch in there, shine it in on the back, and yeah. Down on this side we have a little pinhole of light, and on the other side we have one. It's not exactly invisible, and maybe a little bog, maybe a little bog at the end before the paint job, but it's better. The next panel we want to assess is this one right here. It's got that edge that I think it's a rivet side where it rivets into the pillar post, and that's pretty rough. And if we get a screwdriver, we can see that there's some nasty rust holes down the bottom there. It looks like it's a little panel within a panel, and there's some spot welds here. I think we can take some preliminary measurements in case things go bad, and gently try to extract it and see if we can refabricate a new one. So now we've got this funky little line here that looks like it's welded to the footwell. And the original panel is sandwiched in behind that, and it's a little rotten. So what I think I will do is draw a line about 3/4 of an inch down and cut that out, and we'll modify our new panel to fit. Now we've got all of our garbage out of the way and everything's cleaned up nicely, we can see things have become a little more complicated from when we first took our measurements, as you would expect. When we make our new panel, we're going to have to extend a little here to buff up to that and spot weld it on. Then at the bottom of the footwell, there's going to be a wrap around, and that's going to be spot welded. And where it buffs up to this section here, we're going to see if we can weld that in place. Don't be concerned if you're thinking I'm trying to patch cardboard onto steel. This is a template to see how we went with our measuring, because doing our modifications, we found that the patch we need to make is not symmetrical. It's not square. Shock horror, who would have thought of that, eh? Anyway, we've compensated for it. We have our patch, and if we put it in there, nice and flush as it's meant to go, we can see problems straight away. Eh? It's too low down there, it's too high up there. And our wraparound that we invented, if we stick that on, look where we are now. Our angles are all stuffed up. In the unlikely event there's any young people watching this video, then some worldly advice: don't squander your school years. It's going to come back and bite you in the arse. Trust me. Okay, well, this is no good. Back to the drawing board. Well, we have our template made out of Frisch's cat food box. Let's stick that in there. And so it sits on top. And you can see the funny little tweak we had to do to get our wrap, but that works. And this is our bend line here. It's running straight right there where we need it to be. Now the only modification I think we need to do when the time comes is maybe extend that little gap here 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch and bring it closer to that panel there. All right, let's grab our other templates and this one of course and turn it into steel. Power tools. This is my sheet metal press. This is a workshop that spares no expense. Oh, here's our brand new panel. Slot it in there. Oh, that's not bad, is it, for a backyard job? Sitting flushish on this. The wrap's good. This looks nice and level. I think the only thing that we could have really improved is got a little closer to there, but I think it's fine. Yep, I think it's good. All right, now I believe this is galvanized, so I am hoping with the grinder we can scrape it back and make the welding easier. Otherwise, I might just have to build another one. I kept the template, but we're not going to put it on just yet because I do foresee some potential problems, and there may be a few of you ahead of the game that are already seeing what's about to happen. All right, let's grab the other panel and have a look. Well, here we have a recreation of the panel that we cut off earlier, but living beneath it is a support bracket. Okay, right there, that crusty old thing. Now that has the same lip on it as we did on the previous panel that rivets to the door pillar post. All right, but that is unacceptable condition, so we've swapped it out with a new one. All right, and that lives right there. And this guy here lives on top of it, and he sits in here like that. And it's got to be level with the edge, and it's got to be flush because this outside piece sandwiches into the door pillar post. Okay, so it can't be too loose, but it's still got to fit. Snug is preferable. Now it's time to address some issues that some of you may have already foreseen, and that of course is hidden rust. You have a look down in here. You can see some other support panels that are dissolving away due to our friend oxidization. And the only way to be able to reach them is to dig deeper. That kind of goes against plan A, which was to cut and patch, do the bare minimum, get the bulkhead back on the truck. All right, now the panel that stands in our way is a big one. It runs a full 5 feet across the front of the bulkhead, and on it are many things, including hinges for the bonnet, a rain gutter, and a couple of brackets that go onto support beams that attach somewhere. It also integrates in with the vent system. Now the panel itself is in pretty bad shape. Have a look at the end there. We can see cracking by the hinges and nasty rust holes eating up there where the vents are. All right, now to remove this panel would very much commit us to a full top end bulkhead rebuild. Do we have the skills to be able to pull that off? I don't know. But what are the consequences for ignoring the rust that is within? With all the hard work we've already done, then it'd just be false economy, as the top of the bulkhead begins to dissolve around us much earlier than it should. Yeah, I mean, to ignore it would be very much simply polishing a turd. which is what my beautician says about me.